Josh Waters on the phone. Josh, how you doing, sir?
Hey, good morning, Paul. How are you doing?
We're doing great over here. We're doing great. This is week number 8, and we've got a week number 8 scorecard to go over, and let's kind of get right into it. These are some of the bills that you've been watching. Let's go with the first one, HB 1752, HB 1753. This is something that is a good thing. This is in the support column this week. What do these two pieces of legislation do, Josh?
Yeah, so these two bills by Representative Robin Lundstrom are amending the minimum wage law. As many people know, back in November, there's an initiated act brought forward to raise the minimum wage to $11 an hour by 2021. Right now it's $9.25. And so what this bill will do, Paul, is it would exempt a few groups of people from the minimum wage law, from the state minimum wage law. And so those are people under 21, college students, businesses with less than 25 employees, nonprofits with budgets less than $1 million, and private nonprofit developmental service providers. And so those groups would be exempt from the state, so then they would fall, then under the federal minimum wage law. I think this is a good idea, Paul, because when you look at the Arkansas minimum wage, when it goes up to that $11 per hour, and when you look at the median wage for Arkansas, and that would actually put Arkansas as the highest minimum wage as a percentage of median wage, which is actually a little bit better, more comparable number because, when you look at California or New York and they have a $11 or $12 or $13 minimum wage, it doesn't go as far. And so $11 minimum wage here in Arkansas in 2021 as a percentage of the median wage in Arkansas would put Arkansas as the highest in the country.
Wow. And so these two bills, these companion bills, are essentially trying to help small business owners, really, is what this is about.
Yeah, that there's a bill filed early on in the session that wasn't. There's some pushback and some thoughts. Well, maybe this is going to really help more of these big hospitals or insurance companies. But this bill is a lot more focused, I would say, and says any business less than 25 employees, they're exempt from this. So it really does help the small business owner. Another thing is it helps college students. It helps those under 21 who would typically fill these minimum wage type positions you would think about. I know in my experience, I started working at Andy's Frozen Custard at minimum wage,
That's
as my first job.
Oh, it's the best ice cream in the world.
It's custard, not ice cream.
Whatever.
But,
it's amazing. It's amazing stuff.
It's good stuff. But, this inflated government mandate minimum wage really prices someone out. At 16, looking back, if I'm an employer, would I want to employ a 16-year-old at $11 an hour?
It sounds crazy. When you actually comes out of your mouth, Josh, that sounds insane.
What?
Well, the idea that we would be paying a 16-year-old $11 an hour. I mean, it just sounds crazy.
Yeah. So this bill would say, well, and it also, that's tough for a small business owner, but it kind of prices those, high school students out of the market. Mm-hmm. And so this, I think, brings things more in line with, hopefully what more people were thinking about when they voted for this. They don't want to hurt small business. They don't want to hurt college students or, people in high school. And so this would exempt them from the minimum wage law. So any employer less than 25 employees, and then also nonprofits with less than $1 million operating budget.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. All right, so those bills again are HB 1752, HB 1753. State Representative Robin Lundstrom. She's really coming through with some great legislation, actually. Moving on, we have another in the support column for this week, week number 8, Conduit Scorecard, SB 521, Expanding Freedom of Information Law. Tell us about this, Josh.
Yeah, so this is kind of a follow-up bill from Senator Kim Hammer. I know he came on your show a few weeks ago to talk about this practice where and they've limited the scope to where basically you have these foundations that are set up at or alongside a college or university. Most common use of them is for like athletic support programs, so the Razorback Foundation, the Red Wolf Foundation. And so documents and records that are within those organizations have been denied when someone submits a Freedom of Information Act request. So they came out and said, okay, any private entity that spends 20% of their time or money promoting a government purpose, that has to be disclosed. Or they are subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Well, that didn't pass, Paul. That didn't even get a second in committee. So they come back with this bill and said, okay, we'll super laser focus it to just say that the documents from these types of foundations at universities and colleges, public universities and colleges, they are public records. You can't just say, no, we're not giving them. They are public records. They have to be turned over. And there's a specific exemption saying, but you don't have to turn over donors to these foundations. Because they say that was the concern from the university foundations. They didn't want to disclose donors. Now, I don't know if they don't want to disclose other stuff, but this specifically says those documents from those foundations, public universities, would be public records subject to FOIA.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. That is more focused if you're just changing the definition, making sure that, these are public documents. So hopefully, because I saw the headline last week when this I guess a companion bill or a sister bill from Senator Kim Hammer did go down. And so now he's got this other bill to try to be a little bit more narrow with it. So hopefully he'll have more success on this one, because anytime we're going to expand transparency and expand what the people can see when it comes to government or taxpayer dollars at work, it certainly is certainly something that's worth doing, I think. More information is better. We're talking with Josh Waters. We're going over Week 8's Conduit Scorecard, or Conduit's Week 8. Their scorecard. Let's go to the next bill here. What do we got? HB 1705 is next. Tell us about HB 1705. This is in the opposed column.
Yeah, Paul, this is a really, really bad bill. I'll just be honest. What this bill does is stifles free speech against any judicial candidate. When you read the bill, people are going to say this is a dark money bill. They're going to say this is to weed out dark money, provide transparency. What I would argue, Paul, is that it actually will silence free speech. And the reason I say that is because this bill says any statements that are over $50, money spent $50, that attempts to influence a vote or changes the public's perception of a candidate or Senate candidates would be defined as an expenditure, and that would require disclosure. You have to say who the donor is. You have to put their address out there, their occupation, and it would make it a campaign expenditure just for making a statement that addresses the public's perception of a candidate. Well, Paul, that could be anything. That could be anything you say on the radio, anything I say on the radio. Yep. They tried to do an exemption section, but basically that just have to go to court to see if you're exempted. So just about any statement that has any money behind it, any organized effort behind it, that addresses the public's perception of a candidate, good or bad, would be subject to this and would have to disclose and put the address out. And in these heated political times, Paul, I think that's really dangerous for potential donors to know, hey, my name, my address, my employer, all that's going to be out there as a public record because I decide to engage in free speech. I decide to associate with organizations that engage in free speech, and they could be targeted because of this. So a very dangerous piece of legislation.
All right, so practically, though, and you're exactly right, when you go to disclose donors to these groups that do get involved in elections by disseminating information, these are nonprofits, but privacy is for the citizen and transparency is for the government. And we have a right to associate with whoever we want. And the government can't make us disclose who we're associating with or giving money to when it comes to this. I mean, that's the way the law is now. That's a good thing because we're talking about stifling debate. Because I know how the government operates, and the government will go after the donors, especially with this mob-like mentality that we have. You say one little wrong thing here, they go after your advertisers. We know what the left's up to. We know what the big government types are up to. They don't want they want to take us down a path of bigger and bigger government, and they don't want anybody to be able to say anything. And now I know this is just about judicial elections, Josh. This had nothing to do with regular. This is only if you are going to spend money and get involved in a judicial race. So that makes it even more clear that this is about Courtney Goodson. She lost once. Yeah. There's a certain contingent of people in this state who are really mad that Judge Dan Kemp beat her. They think it was because of outside money, and I think that's probably true, but I also think the stuff that this Judicial Crisis Network sent out, I think that those are true statements. They were giving people the truth about some of the things that Courtney Goodson has done, trips she's taken, money. And so I'm glad that I have more information, not less. Now, she almost lost a second time to David Sterling to retain her seat this last time. And I just want to, while we're on the subject, I have to make this observation, Josh. When Judge Dan Kemp beat her, Asa Hutchinson immediately came out and said, we may need to look at taking away the right of the people to vote. Go look this up. He said it. And instead give me the power to appoint Supreme Court justices. And that, of course, went nowhere, but he did say it, and it was very worrisome at the time. Now we're at the end of another judicial election cycle, and what do we have now? We have people essentially, it comes from that same vein of being upset that this group was in Arkansas spending money, telling people the truth. Because Josh, look, you're an attorney. If you say something that is untrue, you can be sued for that. Correct?
Yeah, and that's what the whole thing comes down to, Paul, is there's already protection against people saying false things or defamatory statements. You can sue and prevent that from happening. What this does is say, we just want to silence free speech that talks about candidates for judicial office. And a really bad part about this bill, Paul, is it provides a private cause of action for an individual to come in, well, I think that statement that person made over there, well, that looks like it falls under this definition. They need to disclose.
Now what's the definition again?
Into court.
What's the definition again? Tell us again.
The definition is money spent attempts to influence a vote for or against a specific candidate or standing candidates, or influence the public's perception of a candidate.
Okay.
I would argue that's any statement.
Yeah. So when the Arkansas Democrat Gazette said in September 10th of 2015, Justice Goodson took a $50,000 tour of Italy thanks to one W.H. Taylor, a business associate of her husband's. Exceptional improprieties tend to be not exceptional at all in Mrs. Justice Goodson's scandal-plagued career, but there's no underestimating her sheer nerve. Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Her Honor the Insider, could they be held accountable according to that definition?
I would say they'd have, at least they could at least be sued for it. Now, there's an exception in the bill that says news articles, opinion editorials, those are exempted out. But when you provide this private cause of action, that's kind of after the fact. So what's going to happen, Paul, I'm afraid, is any statement that an opposing candidate or their special interests that are supporting him, that they hear and they don't like, they're going to haul those people into court, try to disclose their donors, expend the time and money, and possibly get an injunction to stop the free speech until after a campaign is over. There's a very narrow window of the effectiveness of a mailer or TV ad. It's a few weeks, here in Arkansas for a campaign cycle.
Yeah, and they normally start around early voting. So the idea behind this bill that's a terrible bill is essentially, well, you may beat the charge, but you're not going to beat the ride. And we'll just tie everything up in court and silence you.
Yeah. I think this is a silencing of free speech bill.
And who's running this bill? Who's sponsoring this bill?
Oh, this this is sponsored by Representative Jimmy Gazaway.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it's I agree with State Representative Jimmy Gazaway on other things. I disagree with him on this, respectfully. I just, I think this is in a response to people who are upset when groups are using the system legally. I don't think we want to ever. You might be upset that an outside group is spending money telling people the truth. You might be upset by that, but disclosing donors is going down a path where you are going to allow the people in power who have the real power, which is government. I mean, the Judicial Crisis Network does not have the same amount of power as the Arkansas Supreme Court, the legislature, and the governor. We're talking about a small window where groups like this are able to attempt to tell the people the truth. I mean, if you really think about the power structure, it is so out of whack. Everybody wants to talk about dark money, but the fact is there's no dark money group out there that's passing laws that if we don't follow, we go to jail. I mean, the Judicial Crisis Network essentially really has very little power at all, and so do all these other groups. It's the Arkansas Supreme Court that has the power. It's the Arkansas legislature that has the authority. And so this whole it's a mentality that I just can't get behind at all. I know we're running out of time, Josh, but I'll give you another word on this particular bill if you want to say something about it.
Yeah, Paul, there's laws in place. If they directly advocate for the election or defeat of a candidate, okay, they have to disclose
right
if they're doing that. But this is trying to basically muddy the waters, bring every communication that informs voters, informs the public about things that a judge did, a ruling they had, money they took, trips they took, what you've already talked about. It tries to make that the equivalent of advocating for the election defeat of a candidate. Mm-hmm. And it's basically it's a chilling effect on free speech.
All right, next up, last one, SJR 15 for Week 8 of the Conduit Scorecard. Tell us what this bill does, creating lifetime legislators with cooling off periods.
Yeah, Paul, I think everyone remembers back just a few months ago to the term limits amendment that was thrown off the ballot. That amendment would have reduced the amount of time the legislator could be in Little Rock. What this is a proposed constitutional amendment that could, in effect, create lifetime legislators that would be able to serve for 12 years consecutively, take 4 years off, serve another 12 years, take 4 years off, serve another 12 years, an indefinite number of terms. Now, right now they can serve 16 years consecutively, so it would bring that down to 12, but then if they sit out 4 years, they can go back in.
Huh. So, let's see here. This is interesting. Because I've heard people talk about this before. So you serve 12 years, you get to take off 4, and then immediately. So there would be no. My goodness, there would be no term limits in a sense. This is getting rid of term limits. It's just saying that you have to sit out every 12 years for 4 years.
Yeah, the way it's structured and worded. The ballot title, Paul, actually says reducing term limits. And when you think about that, well, no, this absolutely does not do that. It allows people to be down there longer. But they can say that,
I see how they can.
Misleading ballot title because it's taking it from 16 years to 12 years.
Yeah. So
even though it's,
the ballot title, gosh. So technically they can say that it's reducing term limits, because it's taking it from 16 to 12 years, and then they have to sit out 4, and then they get to come back for another 12. So, wow.
So if this bill were to pass, they could serve, 24, 32, 40 years over their lifetime. But the ballot tile is going to say reducing term limits. And if people see that on the ballot, Paul, they're going to vote for it.
They're going to vote
like
for it.
Like they did in issue 3 several years ago.
Now, here's this, but it permanently bans the people from ever adjusting the term limit. Oh, we got to go to break, but Josh, this is great. Folks, to check this out, SJR 15, it's the opposed. This will all be up at conduitnews.com. Hey, Josh, thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.